Hi there, my name is Denny, and welcome to a Dungeon Master Roundtable edition of the Speak Dicely podcast. I'm joined by some of my peers from the D&D YouTubeverse with the intention of asking them some questions about D&D and tabletop. But before we get to that, I'd like to give them the chance to introduce themselves and the channels that they come from.
Hi, I'm Fred Wheeler. I run the How to D&D YouTube channel. I am on Facebook and Twitter. You might find me on Twitch TV, but I don't use it because I pretty much can't trust my players to say anything, anywhere, without getting me into trouble. So that's where you'll find me. And I talk about everything Dungeons & Dragons.
How's it going? No fun allowed. And I don't cause any trouble with my sort of videos. I cover the gambit of D&D, other tabletop role-playing games, and I cover modules and how to run the game.
I'm Steely. I do lore shorts and live streams of the D&D modules.
Thank you guys for joining me once again. And the question I have for you today is, when we build encounters, sometimes we have to do some alteration to stat blocks of certain monsters that we want to use in order to make them strong enough to meet the expectations of our players. And a way to beef up a baddie is to equip them with a magical item. The consequence of doing so, however, is that the players can get those magical items after they beat those opponents. So what I want to know is, what magical item would you give to a typically weaker monster to make them an interesting challenge for your players, but also be fine with them having that item? And Trevor, perhaps we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to go for the cheap answer here of consumables. I like giving monsters potions or little bombs or laser pistols or things, or wands, I guess. Whatever it is, it's a consumable item. And the enemy starts off with a charge, and during the course of that fighting, that charge goes down. Or if it's, a potion, it's just a one and done, I guess. And over the course of the combat, if my players, are able to get it, then boom, they get it. If that laser pistol started off the fight with 30 charges and the enemy got off 2 shots, then congratulations, you guys have a laser pistol with 28 shots left. If that potion had a bandolier of 3 dragon breath potions, used 1, then guess what? After the fight, you guys get 2. I think that there's a lot of fun variety in telegraphing magical items to these, low-level monsters, especially if you give it to the air quote specialist or the leader of a group of multiple mobs, because that tells the tale of, hey, there's that stronger person that's got items. Do we go after that stronger person or do we go after the weaklings first? And I think consumables are a great way to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and their power level generally is not terribly strong, so it's a pretty good way to go. Steely, what kind of items did you come up with to equip your monsters?
So I like equipping monsters with things that play off of their weaknesses, like that provide them with spells that play off of their weaknesses. So imagine a Quickling with the shield spell, or a gelatinous cube that can Misty Step. So it improves off of their weaknesses, and it really like throws the party off. I like to imagine the monsters, like, what kind of spell would I like to have to improve off of my own weaknesses? So it really makes it interesting. And it provides spellcasters in the party with options. I especially love mobility. So like Misty Step is a go-to for me, but it gives the party options, gives them more spell slots. So it frees up the casters. So all around good thing.
A gelatinous cube with Misty Step is terrifying. You keep providing answers that I'm going to have to keep stealing. That is so good.
Take 'em.
Oh, wow. So yeah, just like, I guess you can really homebrew any item to have just a spell effect on them. So yeah. It's a great option.
And the funny thing, go on.
With the gelatinous cube, I like the idea that whatever they eat, they can attune to whatever items are in their belly. So absolutely, grabbing an adventurer and attuning to their stuff. I love that idea. So I run with that.
And if the players have magical items and somebody gets consumed, just do an instant. Oh, that'd be awesome. Ooh. There's something brewing here. All right,
that's going to make that wand of fireballs, really sketchy to have in a dungeon. Let me tell you what.
Before I become too fixated on this gelatinous cube idea, Fred, what kind of magic items are you going to be equipping your monsters with?
This is a hard one for me because I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for a long time and 5e since the very beginning, right back to the alpha playtest. So I find that magic items that I give to my monsters that give them good advantages, that work really well with them, work way too well with player characters. So as a result of that, I'm very much reluctant to give them anything, particularly magic weapons, even a magic weapon that doesn't have a +1 to it. That doesn't mean I don't give that sort of stuff out, but the reality is I know that in the hands of the players it's much more dangerous than it is in the hands of my monsters. And there's nothing in this book here. If I pull up this book is the one, for those of you, 1/3 of the community who have it sitting and collecting dust, or is helping to prop up their computer screen so it's the right height, and you've never actually looked at it because it didn't have anything other than the magic items in there. There's nothing in there that's really going to help me. I always find I have to make a magic item for my baddies that I can then have my players get for it to work. And it has to be kind of cursed, because that's the only way. It doesn't matter if you have a curse inflicted on your monster, because it will often work in favor of all of the failures and faults and what's going on for them. You know, if it corrupts them, that's exactly what you want, because if your villain's corrupted and it's got a weapon that it's essentially responsible for corrupting them or helping to corrupt them even more, then that's not a big deal. But in the hands of players, that's a trade-off. You know, the benefits, do they outweigh the negatives for me to actually say, okay, this is going to work? So I am reluctant to give my monsters very many weapons or magic items that give them just a benefit. There's often got to be something else, which is why most of my homebrew magic items, about 95%, are cursed, rather than just standard straight, benefit. If I wanted that, I can just look at what Wizards of the Coast make, because that's all they really make, is that sort of stuff. If I want cursed stuff, then I've really got to make it myself. And then I leave the players with a quandary of, do I really want this thing? Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if you apply like a cost or like some sort of either physical or mental cost to using magic items, it really does put like pressure on like, should I use this? Is this that important? And I think that makes for some good gameplay too.
What did it cost to equip this item? A magic spell slot.
Whole permanent slot gone until you unattune. Wow.
There's so funnily enough, if you do look in the DMG, there is a building magical items, minor detriments and major detriments.
Right.
But I'm willing to bet that doesn't, get what you want out of it. I'm willing to bet.
No, I mean, to give you an example, the Gauntlets of Ogre Power, really good item. And in the hands of a spellcaster who wants to be strength, wearing armor and casting spells, would be, it's a bit of a nightmare for a dungeon master to try and build an encounter for something that's operating that way. So I made it so that it actually transforms you very slowly into an ogre. So if you want to use the glove, you're going to be an ogre at the end of this. They're like, oh, okay, I'm turning into an ogre. I look like an ogre more and more and more every day. What's going to happen to my brain? And I'm like, it's going to get there eventually. Are you sure you want to keep holding on to this? Because you're going to be pretty dumb by the end of this thing.
And then they get a headband of intellect to cancel that out, but then the headband of intellect drains something else, and it's just this constant rotation of getting more magical items to cancel each other out. It's perfect.
Oh boy. I could see that being a great quest. Oh man. And to kind of bounce off your what you had to say there, Fred, about players becoming more powerful as you give them magic items in comparison to your own monsters. I absolutely do see that, and I embrace that. And I think as I was kind of scrolling through and like perusing items, I came across the Cube of Force. And this is like a small cube that you can press one of the 6 different faces it's got, and it just activates an invisible barrier that prevents several potential things from getting through. And I liked this one because I feel like it creates a kind of puzzle in a combat encounter. It's like, well, how do we hit this thing based on what kind of barrier it's got? And I would love to see my players get a hold of that after defeating this thing, because for me, what my mentality is if they're going to be super strong, I just get to throw harder stuff at them. So that's what I do. Just ramp up the difficulty.
I'm right there with you.
Otherwise, yeah. Otherwise,
like the more powerful they get, the better stuff you can throw at them.
absolutely. It's just going to snowball. But I also wanted to give some shout outs to items that potentially destroy themselves or like blow up after being used, like the Horn of Blasting and the Helm of Brilliance. Oh, I thought those are some great potential items that cannot, or that might possibly not make it to the players.
The Horn of Blasting is really great because no matter what, it's going to be a memorable encounter. It could be in the, like for me, it was in the clutches of a dragon that was flying the player up in the sky. They use the Horn of Blasting to blow themselves up. Or it could be as mundane as you're going up against 2 goblins. You use it to look like a cool action hero, and then you end up blowing yourself up too, right? No matter what, it's going to be memorable.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you guys for your answers on magical items you would equip your monsters with. And for the folks out there, leave a note in the comments of what are some magic items you gave to your monsters and how did it go after your players got a hold of them. I'd love to hear what you've got to say. Well, thank you guys for joining me here again, and that's about all the time we have for this episode. So until next time, I will speak Dicely with you again soon. Bye-bye! This episode of the Speak Dicely podcast was produced and edited by myself, Teni Brant, and the intro and outro music were created by Teni Brant. Thank you for the support, and we'll see you next time on the Speak Dicely podcast.